sewage water everywhere. Mix that with some rotten food smells, and welcome to Carnival Triumph.
To make matters even worse, one of the buses carrying passengers from the port in Mobile, Alabama to New Orleans broke down, causing even more frustration for the exhausted guests. Joining us now from Miami, maritime attorney Michael Winkleman, and from Dallas, Jay Herring, who worked on the Carnival Triumph and now is the author of the book, The Truth About Cruise Ships. Michael, let me begin with you and just say, look, I don't think this is the way anybody wants to spend their vacation. This was a bad time. But I also say, let's be honest about this. This was not Katrina, as some knucklehead suggested these folks had lived through Katrina. Nobody lost their lives, right? Nobody is like dying from sickness from all the sewage. That's not the case. So the question is, exactly what was the injury? I mean, what's wrong with this? They stood in line for sandwiches and they had a longer vacation. So what's the injury?
Well, number one, I wouldn't call it a longer vacation, and to even think about calling that a vacation would be sort of silly. I mean, these are people that for an extra 5 days were forced to live in deplorable conditions that you just heard from. And certainly, thank goodness, it's not like the Costa Concordia where 32 people died. But to think that these people didn't suffer is a sort of little bit ridiculous. And you're hearing a lot of different versions of the stories. And I don't dispute that the people that were in the captain's suite up top had a lot different experience than the people that were on the potty floors, the bottom two levels where there was sewage all over the walls and all over the place.
But you're saying that really this was suffering, and I'm just wondering if, in fact, they might have been inconvenienced, but at most that was it. And yet you hear people talk about it as if this was this hellish experience. And I imagine that they're coming to you, Michael, and saying, hey, get me some compensation. Am I right? Are people approaching you?
Absolutely. I've already spoken with numerous passengers aboard there, and one, I've got an excellent analogy, which is the Costa Concordia, which happened just 13 months ago. When that happened, 32 people died. But Carnival is the ultimate parent company of Costa Concordia. Every single person that was on that ship, even if they were uninjured, they were offered $14,000. So here, that was a short period of time in a sheer terror. And my law firm represents dozens of people that were hurt in the Concordia, which is presently, the lawsuits are presently pending in Italy. But here you had 5 days of just disgusting, awful stories, living with sewage, overflowing toilets. I mean, the horror stories are pretty obvious.
Michael, there's a huge difference between 32 people dying, the ship falling over on its side, the captain. I mean, that's different. Jay, let me come to you and say right now, what Carnival is offering is they're going to reimburse people for the cost of this cruise. They're offering them another free cruise. They're giving them $500. I mean, do you think that, in fact, Michael should be asking for millions for each of these passengers?
You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, the Costa Concordia was definitely a 10. 32 people lost their lives. The ship sank. This incident, I would say, is probably a 5 or a 6. Nobody was hurt. And so I think the compensation that Carnival has offered is more than adequate. Maybe, could we bump it to $1,000? Maybe, but I think given the circumstances, I think this is very fair.
Well, wait a second. Hold on. Let's go back the other side of this. These folks paid for a vacation. These are hardworking people. This was their vacation time, and they were basically, stranded on this ship. They had no They had no way to get off. And that leads me to another question: why couldn't Carnival fly somebody out there and fix the ship? What's the problem here?
Yeah, I mean, no question they had a terrible time. I think that the passengers who are eager to sue, you'll find are going to be generally less happy in life than those who take this in stride. Again, nobody was hurt. And, we talk about why didn't they just fly him out? We heard a report of the cruise director coming on and say they could not afford it. And I don't really, maybe they said that, but I don't believe that was really the case. I mean, come on, Carnival's got deep pockets. We know they can afford it. I think maybe what happened was they were trying to keep the passengers from freaking out, from feeling like they were in danger.
Now, Jay, so you used to work for them. You used to work on this very boat. Am I right? So, in your experience, why wouldn't they just get these folks out? Look, I mean, in reality, you have people missing work. You have people feeling as if, hey, I'm stuck here. I can't get off. I'm in the middle of the ocean and no one's helping me. I'm claustrophobic. I mean, they should have been sensitive to these people and done a better job. And as a former executive, I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, so there's no way. I mean, the reason why they could not transfer them off the ship, the only way to do that, let's say here's your cruise ship and it's going to remain stationary. and you're going to have this small little boat that's going to transfer between the vessels. Well, let's say you have 1 to 2 foot waves. This boat's going to be bobbing up and down, and you're going to have a gangway from this boat to the ship that, again, remains stationary. Young children, the elderly, trying to walk across a gangway that's bobbing up and down. I mean, it could have been disastrous. People could fall in the water, get crushed between the two boats. I mean, the only safe option, unfortunately, was that they needed to stay on the boat until they could get it back to port.
You know, I just find this kind of thinking nuts. I got to tell you, I mean, this is what airlines say when they stick you on the tarmac for 8 hours and say, oh, we couldn't take you back to the terminal because we don't want to miss, you know, if they give us the authority to leave, and it would have been such a confusion. But the reality is, you know what, as the individual passenger, you are being abused. I mean, you're a former executive on the cruise ship. Do you understand how people feel that they're being taken advantage of?
I can understand that feeling. And, you know, your analogy with the airplane, let's take that and put the airplane in the air. Okay, now there's no chance for you to get off that airplane. That's kind of what it is on the ship. There's no alternative. I mean, there's no safe alternative to get off that boat unless it's docked. All
right, Michael, did you intervene on behalf of the passengers while they were on board? Were you able to put pressure on Carnival and tell them to do something to fix the boat?
No, I wasn't. I actually was working with them on several cases and had conversations about it, but sadly my power is limited to that in a court of law. But I think it's an important point, Juan, that is they certainly had an option of going back to Mexico and sending all those people back from Mexico. They probably would have been there in a day or two instead of subjecting them to 5 more days of this awfulness. And I just want to be clear. I don't think everyone's going to have a different case. I'm not saying anybody's case is worth $1 million. And what's important is it is a jury of your peers that decides ultimately what the damages should be. And it's my job to help them to do what I can to get what is fair and reasonable under the law.
No. Look, you do your job. You represent your clients. But here's my question to the two of you. What happens to Carnival? We know about the incident in Italy. Now we know about this one. You know, the people who are quoted in the papers as experts on cruises say, oh, Carnival's a great cruise ship line. Well, how can that be? What does that say about the entire industry? I'm not getting on a cruise ship if they're telling me I can't come back and do my work, if they're going to stick me out there in these hellish conditions. One at a time. Michael, Jay, tell me, what's going to go on now with Carnival?
I think, honestly, pretty much nothing happens because I think, number one, Americans have a short-term memory or bad short-term memories. There's been a series of incidents, and it goes away quickly.
All right,
but
Jay,
importantly,
Jay, what do you say?
So in passengers that take cruises, there's a 95% approval rating on whether they enjoyed their cruise. So that's why you're going to see that this is not going to affect passenger bookings or overall revenue
come on,
for
Jay.
Carnival or any cruise
I don't think
line.
they're going to get 95% out of the folks that were stuck there in the Gulf, do you? No.
Sure. I mean, this is a 0% approval rating, but on most cruises that smooth safely, that's what happens.
This one's going to stick in a lot of minds.
I agree that cruises are generally safe and generally enjoyable and a very affordable vacation. When bad things happen, though, unfortunately,
not this time,
takes an
gentlemen.
adversarial position.
Well, thanks for coming in, gentlemen. Next on the rundown, President Obama in Chicago.